You have to be able to recognize the opportunities, the things that pop into your life that are going to take you to the next level. If you're not in tune with yourself, if you're always distracted, you won't be able to recognize it. I knew that it was no way that event would pop back up to me a second time. And I knew enough about myself, just where I was in my life, that, hey, okay, what is the universe trying to say to me? And I followed up with it. And that's one of the great things about being a great leader. You have to be able to recognize, even if it's good or bad, you have to pay attention to that, because it can literally change your entire life.
Welcome to Warriors at Work. This is Jeannie Coomber, your guide and host. Warriors at Work is a place where everyone in the workplace can come together, gain insight, encouragement, tell stories, connect, and share wisdom. We are a place of like-minded people at different stages of life, all coming together with a shared interest of enlightening and inspiring one another. If you're interested in going from the predictable to the potent, and you want to find your warrior magic, step into the journey with us. Welcome to Warriors at Work. Hey everybody, it's Jeannie Coomber. Thank you so much for joining me here at the Warriors at Work podcast. Today's conversation is with Denetra Hampton. I call her the nurse's storyteller. She is a 22-year Navy veteran, a former United States Naval Nurse Corp officer, and she is the founder of For Nurses by Nurses Productions, which is a media platform that includes a global health initiative, a digital magazine, and a film production platform. She is a global health influencer, a nurse historian, and a leader. Denetra is committed to raising the voice of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the nursing field, and why it has a direct impact on global health. We break all of that down, including the really powerful work that she has already brought to the world as a filmmaker. This is a conversation that will enlighten you and inspire you. Enjoy. Welcome to the Warriors at Work podcast. This is Jeannie Coomber, your guide and host, and I am delighted to have Denetra Hampton here with me today. So Denetra, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Jenny.
So I am so humbled and feel really lucky to be in this conversation with you today. And where I thought we could start is I just want to pull out a couple of things from your background and then get you to describe yourself. So 22-year Navy veteran and former U.S. Naval Nurse Corp officer turned producer of film. And now you're a global health influencer, nurse historian, and a leader. Denetra, how do you describe yourself, thinking about your mission in life?
You know, what you just said, it all had different steps. Of course, when you are trying to pursue a career or your purpose, there's different levels to that. Who people are witnessing today on this podcast, there was a sort of a becoming to that. It didn't happen overnight. But it all started with being a Navy nurse. I did 22 years of my life in the United States Navy. So I became a nurse in the Navy. That's my pedigree. And all of that discipline and all of that experience hemorrhaged over to who you all are witnessing today. Mm-hmm. Now, the filmmaking piece, that's a whole nother story. But I like to say that it's part of the process. You know, everything that I did for those 22 years, it all led to that moment where the filmmaking came into my life. And now I'm transitioned and doing all of that on film, taking all of that nursing science and taking all of that discipline and putting it to film. So there you have it in a nutshell, all at different levels.
So divinely guided. And one of the things that is such a profound part of your journey is this calling you had. So you were retiring from the Navy, probably anticipating a very retired-like life. And then you had this calling to do this documentary. I'd love for you to tell the story.
I believe that nothing happens by accident. Okay. And it doesn't matter who you are or what position you're in. I truly believe that everything has been written. We're living this stuff out. Okay. That's my stance on it. So, I'm doing my thing, and I log onto Facebook like everyone else does during their day. And there was this event that was happening about this story called the Black Angels. The event was being held in Staten Island, New York. There was this lady who was telling this story about these 300 African-American nurses who had come to a hospital called Seaview Hospital back in the 1940s. They were going to take care of patients with tuberculosis. Now, you have to remember back in the 1940s, segregation was in place. In this particular time, when we had the tuberculosis pandemic, the white nurses walked away from the job. And these 300 nurses from around the country came to Seaview Hospital, which was the largest sanatorium in the country that held over 2,000 patients. And they went there to take care of these patients when other nurses walked away. And they got that name called the Black Angels from the patients, because the patients said all they saw were Black nurses. There was this lady telling this story. I called the museum. I couldn't believe it. And I told her who I was and if I could speak to that lady. She said, well, I can't give you her information, but I can take your information and give it to her, which was the right thing to do. And she did that. And about 2 weeks later, the lady called me. And that was the birth of Denetra Hampton, the producer and the filmmaker. And the Black Angels of Nurses story was my very first debut film. That was back in 2018. And since then, I did The Year of the Nurse and Midwife, and now working on my third film. So that event, had it not been for that particular cross on my Facebook page, you wouldn't be talking to Denetra Hampton today.
It's a wild story. When you began the process and you made the decision to go in and do the documentary on the Black Angels, did anything surprise you in that journey where when you were in it and you were having conversations, you're like, didn't quite expect this to have happened?
Yeah, lots. I mean, I had never did this stuff before. I mean, I was teaching nursing science on the chalkboard. And then all of a sudden, God said, no, you need to take that and let's transition that into filmmaking. It was all foreign to me. But what I want to point out to people who are watching is, as we said, everything was divine. There was a young guy who was doing my branding videos who was in my life at the time.
Unbelievable.
And I said to him, I have this story. Can you help me do it? And he is the director, and his name is Reed Curley. And he was there at the right time to go with me to Staten Island, New York, to film this story. And that's why I believe that everything happens for a reason. So I knew nothing about filming, but I did know about writing a script and narrating because I was a teacher. This is what I mean by everything coming into play. I had been teaching up in front of people. My voice was there. I knew how to write curriculums, and that transferred into me writing a script. So I wrote a script, narrated the film. Reed came in and directed and edited and did all of the filming. So everything was there for me. So if I had to say what surprised me was not just that the story crossed my path, was that everything that I needed to complete the project was there.
You were really paying attention. You were listening and got into action based upon everything that was in front of you.
I always say when I'm talking about this story to people is that that's one of the key things about being a great leader is self-awareness. You have to be able to recognize the opportunities, the things that pop into your life that are going to take you to the next level. If you're not in tune with yourself, if you're always distracted, you won't be able to recognize it. I knew that it was no way that that event would pop back up to me a second time. And I knew enough about myself, just where I was in my life, that, hey, okay, what is the universe trying to say to me? And I followed up with it. And that's one of the great things about being a great leader. You have to pay attention to that because it can literally change your entire life. So yeah, I was in a space just spiritually and mentally where the universe knew that I was ready to take on this project. And I believe that's what happened because ever since I did that documentary, my entire life has changed.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So you went from this extraordinary documentary experience to creating a production company. Tell us a little bit about that journey and what were some of the first things you put into place? And where do you see yourself going with this production company?
You know, we had For Nurses by Nurses, a leadership initiative. It was already in place. It was my leadership executive forum that I did. Now it's For Nurses by Nurses Productions. I decided something's changing here. So I knew I had to do that because when I completed the film, understand that the gift makes room for you. When God gives you a gift, it's going to part the Red Seas. So when I completed the Black Angels, it was like fire. Everybody wanted to see that film. So I had to do a tour. I decided to call the top 10 nursing schools in the country, Duke, South Carolina, Penn State, all of them, VCU, and they all said, you've got to be kidding me. We want to see this film. So I took the film around to the leading nursing facilities in the country. And that led to going to museums and libraries all over the country. And then the pandemic hit. And now we're getting ready to restart that tour. My next screening is right here in Norfolk on July 11th. But that film led to it being seen all over the country. So I knew I had to pick up and create the next step, which was For Nurses by Nurses Productions. And that's how everything has come into play on what you know it as today. Again, I want to repeat, the gift makes room for you.
I love that expression, by the way.
When God gives you the gift that's ready to take you to the next level, it's going to create this path, this open door. And everything's going to just open up for you. And that's what the Black Angels did for me. It created a path that everybody that came into contact with it, they were simply amazed. So it created the next level in my life.
Everything you just said, like I got chills because that is so true. Know it's there and do something with it and step out of the way.
You have to have patience. I want people in the audience and leaders to know that even if you take on this job, an executive position, it may not be for you to change the entire world while you're there. But wherever that thing is placing you, you have to bloom where you're planted right there. Because whatever you're doing there is going to create the next ingredient for the next level.
I'd love to talk about what the experience is like. So documentary is shown, it concludes, then what discussion ensues?
It's important for me to make sure that the people who helped me make this thing happen are represented. Usually the director is there with me. We had a nurse scientist who was in the film. Dr. Dana Hines came in and talked about tuberculosis in this film. She's a nurse scientist. She talked about the history of that and all of the data back in the 1940s, which was huge to have in the film for that great conversation that scholars like to have, because one of the great things about the film is that it forces a conversation. Because here we are now coming out post-pandemic COVID-19, but how far have we really come? This was 1940, coming out of tuberculosis pandemic. What have we learned? Have we learned anything? And where are we going? Because it wasn't too long ago. I mean, that's 1940, but still we have a long way to go. But I like to have the nurse scientist there. I like to have the director there. And we talk about what this meant for all of us, because it meant something different for each of us. To experience Marjorie Tucker Reed, who is the Black angel in the story that we brought to light. She was born right here in Norfolk, Virginia, so it was important for us to be able to tell her story. Her family is in the documentary. So we have the film. The film is done. People are totally in awe, because I can guarantee you every time that I did it, 99.99% of the people have never heard of this story. And at a time such as this, where people want to know their history and they want to know their part in the history, particularly African American history, it's just important for all fronts to be able to witness this particular story, and how we all have to be intentional and deliberate about making things better. So that conversation is always had after I'm there.
And now you're talking with nurses, scholars, researchers, leaders around the country to bridge the gap around health disparities. So say more about health equity, because this is such a key part of your whole mission here.
I like to think about it in the leadership approach. Although what I do is really grassroots work, no one's funding this work. All this stuff comes out of my pocket. So I am a grassroots practitioner, but I'm a leader. One of the things about health inequities is that it transcends. It has a place where leadership has to make the right decisions in order for us to bridge those gaps. So I'm always trying to speak to leaders in that way on us being intentional about that, because oftentimes when we think about health inequities, we think about it just on the clinical side. We don't think about the business aspect of that. Health is wealth. And when you can think about it from a profit side, you're going to be able to contribute more in the business world. Because when people come into your workspace, everything about that one person they bring, not just their talent, but they bring their health as well. And if they're not functioning mentally and spiritually, they're not able to do things from a social economic standpoint. You don't have great people. You don't have great culture. You don't have a great environment. And that ultimately can affect your business. And so I like to tell leaders, you may not necessarily see the importance of having maybe a nurse or someone medical, a nurse scientist on your boards, but this is probably one of the biggest mistakes that business boards make, is not understanding the importance of social determinants of health. And social determinants of health in regards to health inequities is that it brings the whole person to the table. It brings the entire person to the game. Mental health is a big issue, one of the biggest issues in the country right now. And if leaders don't understand anything, they have to understand the importance of how everything a person goes through from the moment that they get up to the moment that they go to bed affects how they behave. And that includes access to care. That includes education. That includes their ability to access all of those things. And if any part of their daily operations, whether it's children, their parents, ailing parents, are being affected by that, then they are too. And then when they are, you are. And when you are, so is your profit. Because most of the time, as businesses, we can only see the dollar signs.
Sure. Do you use your film as the basis of that conversation, as like a step-off point?
It can be. And absolutely, yes, because in every one of my films, I have a nurse scientist and a health inequity that I'm talking about. In this film, it was tuberculosis. It's always something that affects us socially and economically. And so we like to talk about that in the end of the film on our panels. Absolutely.
What are you finding the ask is? So let's say you're in a room full of people that are a part of a large hospital. Do you have a specific ask, or is it more conversation like we're having back and forth?
It's on all levels, actually. because in that audience that I normally show the films to, it ranges from students all the way up to executives. And you do have people who want to know not just the clinical aspect of tuberculosis, but you have to remember back in the 1940s, the biggest thing about this film that we were dealing with was segregation. And so now we have a pandemic where we're not dealing with segregation, but we have racial injustices. We're missing the mark still. You know what I mean? So that's the conversation from the scholars. Why are we missing the mark still? The answer, in my opinion, is that diversity, inclusion, and being intentional about it. Not just being performative and not being obligatory, just doing these monthly campaigns, but you have to be intentional as leaders about what that means. And sometimes that means sacrifice. And we haven't gotten there yet.
I think a lot of it is you have to acknowledge either what you don't know or what you haven't gotten right. As part of that, as difficult, as uncomfortable, and as painful as that is, in order for you to have the intention, it's to say, we don't have this right. We don't have the balance and the equity that we really need and desire. And I'm sure that comes up in a lot of those conversations where you might even come in contact with people like, no, we've got this. No, you don't.
Yeah.
And it's acknowledging that.
Now people realize that, no, we don't got it. But the thing is being willing to make the necessary changes. And, one of the big things is, number one, having the authentic conversation about that.
Yeah.
Because as much as we'd like to bridge those gaps, it's important to understand that everything starts with the individual. If you have individuals at a table, it doesn't matter how smart they are or where they've been or how long they've been sitting in that seat. If they are people who truly believe that racism is part of the game, then you're not going to get anything from those people. You have to put people in place who are necessary to the progress, not necessary to the profit. And oftentimes we want people necessary to profit and not the process.
What a powerful soundbite. Necessary to the progress, not the profit.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that means people who have been doing it we have these people, I've seen it. You have people who've been sitting in the same seat for 25 years. And we don't want to remove that person, even if we know that person is hurting the progress. That's where we have to get as authentic leadership. And we have to continue to have these kind of conversations like you and I are having. And we have to say, you know what? I don't get it, but I'm willing to listen and see what it is I need to do to make this happen. And understand, this is a long-term game. This is not nothing that happens overnight. Even if you want to do it, understand it's not going to happen overnight. But you have to be intentional about it day after day and recognizing that, hey, look, one step at a time. This is what I always say to my colleagues. One step at a time, but intentional about those steps that you make.
So when you think about all the conversations you've had with various levels in healthcare organizations and the nursing industry, what do you see as the evolution of the nursing industry as we're moving through this pandemic?
We've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. We are seen as a lot of things. We're known for our clinical aspect, but nursing is not known for leadership, not globally. And I want to say nationally, we're not known for that. People don't bring us into the boardrooms because we haven't mastered diversity and inclusion. When nursing starts to recognize the value of diversity in this profession, everything that we are capable of doing, whether it's our nursing, whether it's our science, our research, it's going to be able to contribute to medicine and global health in ways that we have never yet to imagine. And it's simply because we haven't mastered that. So when you talk about evolving, we haven't did that. We haven't did it. even in 2021, and even in a pandemic where, we've been hailed as heroes, and they've been heroes. But we have a long way to go when it comes to the forefront, when it comes to being in spaces where people recognize us for who we are as leaders. It requires something else besides our clinical mastership.
What part do you want to play in that, Denetra?
What we're doing here at For Nurses by Nurses Productions is we're creating this space that I want to be known for the impact that it has made. I have pillars in my company. One of them is nursing and science, and the other is diversity and inclusion, because that's the voice that I want people to hear. So even when I'm gone, when Denetra Hampton is long gone from this world, they get that this company was about empowering nursing through nursing science and diversity and inclusion. So the platform that we're building, I want this space that we've created, that people who are coming in behind us, the students, the scholars, they can all go through and see a web that we've weaved about those things. And that voice, if you keep raising that voice, it's going to be something that people are going to want to hear. But you have to keep doing that, even on the small level that we are doing it. So I'm hoping that we're doing it through film, though. We're doing that through the storytelling, through bringing all of these things to life, all of the hidden gems, the hidden stories, the hidden contributions that African Americans and people of color as well, because we also bring those stories to light as well. Everything that they've contributed to science and research, and how that has affected our social determinants of health. And if we tell those stories, the children, everyone who continues to come to us are going to get just how important it is for diversity and inclusion to be a part in our daily lives.
Wow, what a beautiful vision.
Yeah.
Beautiful vision.
I'm deliberate about that, making sure that leadership understands that, when you hear For Nurses by Nurses Productions, you know what you're going to get. When you come to this production company, if you want to know about nursing science and medicine and research and the history of that, then that's what we're going to give you.
So you have Black Angels being shown July 11th in Norfolk.
Right at the Narrow Theater.
And you have two other films. Zoom out for me. Go into 2022. What's going to happen? What's next?
July 11th, the Black Angels will be showing at the Narrow Theater here in Norfolk, Virginia. The Year of the Nurse and Midwife was done during the pandemic. Well, right before the pandemic was done. That is on my website. You can see that. The World Health Organization is in that film. We have some fantastic players. John Hopkins is in that film. It's a fantastic show. We talked about the cultural aspect of nursing during the Year of the Nurse and the midwife, because a lot of people don't know the value of the midwife. And that was my second film. Now we are in production. The running title is The Dixie Three. And it is about these civil rights case out of Hampton, Virginia that concerned 3 nurses. And that's all I'm going to say about that film.
Oh.
But it is going to be released in January of 2022. I just did the interview with the Hampton Museum historian, who's going to be in that as well. And then that's going to be a fantastic story too. So that's in production. But I'm also in production about my own little show on the road called Chasing History. I'm a member of what they call the Underground Network. And the Underground Network is a network where there are spots in the country where the Underground Railroad actually took place. I call it the Underground Network, a road trip. And I am going across country and educating everybody on the history of these particular spots, these national historic spots that were part of the Underground Railroad.
I could literally talk to you for like 16 hours. I have so many questions. Let's talk about you. First of all, where do you get your inspiration from? Is this through prayer, meditation? Is it journaling? Is it reading? Is it all the above? I mean, the Black Angels was its own thing, but all the subsequent work, where's it coming from?
Well, a lot of that you just said is part of my daily my life. But I
Mm.
think I'm lucky to be in a space where I have found my purpose. People live all their lives and never get why they were put on this earth. And if I could put that in a bottle and give it to everyone, that's what I would do. I get up in the morning and I know exactly why I was put on this earth.
Mm.
And because I know that and I have received that, the universe works for me. And it has went before me and it gives me everything that I need to complete the journey. So when I became that person, that girl that God decided, okay, now I can trust you to hear me, then I became who you all are witnessing.
How you talk about it too with such certainty and clarity and conviction is so rich and definitive. It's just such a powerful energy, the way that you talk about this.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about who are those people in your personal life that you surround yourself with that keep you accountable, but also focused on your growth and evolution.
All this stuff started with teaching students. My students created something in me that the world is witnessing on different levels now. But it all started in this little shop in Suffolk. And that's how I got my voice. That's how I got my writing skills. That's how I got my teaching skills. That's how I got my production skills. And it all started with my students. So when a student comes around me, that's my energy. That it's a reminder. I like to say that they are that thorn in my side. That's that thorn that God gives us sometimes as a reminder of just who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, you get going and you forget where you came from. But my students are my thorn in my side to say, okay, I got it. When it comes to leadership, I really like Indra Nooyi. She is the former CEO of Pepsi.
Mm-hmm.
And I follow her all the time. I'm not promoting her, but she has this great new book coming out. And I am a huge fan of her leadership skills, her presence. Everything about who she is represents what I strive to be. And I watch her every move, literally watch everything she does and everything she says. And, there's another lady out there by the name of Tina Wells. She's a marketing scholar. And I have followed her since her days of becoming an entrepreneur. So on that side of entrepreneurship, I liked Tina Wells and what she's done with her marketing company. But I also like Indra Nooyi about who she is as that president and that executive presence and, her ability to articulate her mission and vision for Pepsi for so long and do it as a woman of color has been profound for me as a person who is growing. But also, I have a wonderful husband of 25 years. And that guy is the guy that God gave me to support this project. Because again, when you're on purpose, you have everything you need and it's the right things. So 25 years of marriage, that's a hard chore, but it's worked. And he's that guy. And I'm grateful for him.
Love it. So tell us a little bit about your own journey, you're obviously a very self-aware person, things that you're looking to get better at, things that you're growing and learning with.
And this is what I say, anybody who is trying to find this thing that I'm talking about, integrity. How you do one thing is how you do everything. But God's only concerned with your heart. He's only concerned with who you are as a person, how you do things day in and day out. Do you make your bed up in the morning? Do you go in the grocery store and the teller accidentally puts an extra apple in there and you take it home, or do you take it back? Do you take the cart back when you finish putting your groceries in the car? Now, these are things I like to say is the difference between how we as humans think about integrity and how God thinks about integrity. So integrity is everything. And it is what determines what happens in your life next, whether the universe can trust you. So for me, it's constantly proving to the universe, I'm your girl. That God can trust me. You can trust me with this. And when that happens, you're going to find that your life is off the charts. Because integrity hemorrhages over to everything else. There's no need to talk about nothing else. I mean, because if you've got integrity, it happens in your business, it happens in your relationships and everything. But if you are a lie, cheat, or steal, then no kind of talent you have is going to be able to mask that.
Oh, what a beautiful way to end this conversation. Words to live by, integrity being the foundation of all things.
Yeah.
I mean, Denetra, this was such a beautiful and heartfelt, warming conversation. Like, I'm so grateful you're doing this work in the world.
I'm glad you invited me to come and talk about it, especially from a leadership standpoint. And, I hope that the people who are watching and who are part of your community get how valuable diversity and inclusion is and how valuable integrity is with diversity and inclusion. Just how valuable that stuff is for us individually and as business people and as leaders. Because once you figure out that value, everything about your life is going to change for the better.
If I had an emoji, I would hit the clap button right now. Thank you so much for being in this conversation with me. Thank you for all the work that you're doing, all the work that's coming down the path, such important things that you're doing, not just for the nursing industry, but businesses as a whole, and really creating a different narrative in this space that is so needed and takes so much courage and bravery, determination, and focus. And I'm incredibly grateful that you're doing it.
No, thank you for what you're doing, because we all have our space and you have a great space, and it's wonderful to meet you. And I look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks to everybody for listening to another episode of Warriors at Work and letting us be a part of your warrior journey. You can ask questions and make suggestions for future topics at jc@jeanniecoomber.com. Connect with me personally on LinkedIn and Instagram, and join us on the Warrior Conversations channel on YouTube and at the Warrior Magic Community page on Facebook. You can find links to all these places on my website, jeanniecoomber.com. And most importantly, be sure to tell friends about us, subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, Spreaker, and Spotify. It helps others find the show and puts more warrior magic out into the world.